Hello and welcome to the official HaytersTV Premier League Roundup show. I'm your host, Aaron Goldstein, and today I'm joined by Lewis Byron and Japtej Gura. We have got a lot to unpack over a crazy Premier League weekend, and let's get straight into it. Since Pep Guardiola came to England, only twice has the league title not been won by Manchester City. This season, however, things are not going to plan.
A little bit in our thoughts, that a little bit in negativity, but it's normal. So football is a sense of mood, and when you win a lot and discontinuity, don't give us the self-aware that you can do it, and when you lose 3 games in a row in the Premier League, and that situation is always a little bit there, but many things going to happen. We have to break the results as much as possible because the victories help us a lot to be more positive and more confident, and we have to do it. But at the same time, so after 8 years here, I knew in the last 1 or 2, 3 years that sooner or later we will drop. Of course, never expect to lose 3 Premier Leagues in a row.
Can Pep and Man City turn it around?
Yeah, of course. I mean, they've proved it in recent years. Maybe not from as far back as they are now, and they've never really had this 5 games in a row where they've not won. But I think it was going a little stale at the start of the year. The motivation collectively wasn't all there to try and win it again because they've done it so many years in a row now. But now they've started to lose 4 or 5 games in a row. A lot of the outside fans are doubting them. I think that's all they need. A few doubts from outside is the motivation they need to try and prove people wrong again.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not so sure. I feel like this weekend's game against Liverpool is massive for City mainly. If they lose, I think that's them done. 12 points, in my opinion, is insurmountable. I don't care how early on in the season it is. I think Arsenal very much still in it. That'll keep going. But if City lose this weekend, I think they're out of it.
Do you think that the last 5 games have showcased that Man City are a one-man team?
No, I think a one-man team is strong, but it does definitely showcase how important Rodri is for him. Like every time he's dropped out in previous years, they've always struggled. But I just don't think their team's firing all over the pitch, regardless of Rodri dropping out. I know De Bruyne's been in and out of the team. Haaland's not been on amazing form as of the last few weeks, even though he's still got 11 goals, I think.
He's got 12, but most of them came in the first 5 games of the season.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, I suppose that shows that the recent performances haven't been up to standard.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can say they're a one-man team, but the stats don't lie. I think that without Rodri in the team this season, they've lost 6 out of 14 games, which is a crazy stat. That's like relegation sort of teams you'd expect that from. So that's obviously a huge thing. Plus, then the players who've come in to replace him, Kovacic, Gundogan, they've just not been at it. So it's a lot of things coming together at once.
But this is, I wouldn't be surprised if Man City do turn it around though, because this is what they need. They needed to find another bit of motivation from somewhere.
But would you not say that 12 points, if they lose, is just too much?
I wouldn't say it obviously makes it a lot harder and it makes it more unlikely, but it's definitely not too much. They needed something else. The 5th title wasn't enough for them to cling on to and try and we've done it 5 times instead of 4. Now everyone's doubting them. Now it's more unlikely. That's what they need to kick into gear.
One thing that there are some people out there. I'm not one of those people, but there are. You look on Twitter, you look on all forms of social media. There's people that call and have done for years Pep Guardiola a fraud. I'm not saying he is, making that very, very, very clear. However, is it crazy to offer him a new 2-year extension in the midst of their worst run that they've had under him? On top of that, this is a Man City team that are starting to falter. They are aging a little bit as well. A lot of their players are over 30. Do you not think it might be time to refresh? Also, Pep has always managed top teams. If his City team are starting to go on the decline, is he the guy to grab them by the scruff of their necks and take them back up?
Yeah, I mean, I disagree with that because, in my opinion, he's the best manager of all time. He's certainly the best manager in the world right now. And, a manager like that, you cling on to for as long as you can. I think if you look at City fans' reaction, I don't think you'd find a City fan who's disappointed thinking, oh, why have we offered him a deal? And the deal's not, a reward for the form that they're in right now. It's a reward for the 4 titles that they've won back to back. So, yeah, I mean, he's not the problem, in my opinion. The problem is the squad that they currently have, which he is, responsible for, it is too aging, like you said. Players like Gundogan, even signing Gundogan back in the summer, in my opinion, was a terrible move. Obviously, in hindsight, you can say whatever. But if you were to look at it at the time, how was he, 32, 33? Obviously he had a great season at Barcelona last year, but to re-sign him this season, it just didn't make much sense. And judging off his performances this season, he's been quite poor. So, and then you've got players like Bernardo Silva, De Bruyne, Kyle Walker, who was terrible against Spurs, all aging at the same time. So they've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I think that the announcement of his contract, first of all, I think it's obviously a good thing for City fans and City to keep the best manager in the world.
City fans, or the City fan that apparently exists somewhere out there?
For anyone who likes Man City. But I think it's strategic timing of announcing this contract. I don't think it would have been, agreed this weekend and announced the next day. I reckon it's been in talks for a while. And it's perfect to announce it in their little bad patch, because it shows that he's sticking with the football club, not just when they're doing well, but when they're going through a tough period.
Pep Guardiola has lost to Spurs more times than any other team in his managerial career, 9. And it was also his joint biggest ever defeat. Do you know what the last team to beat him 4-0 was?
No.
It was Real Madrid in the Champions League against Bayern Munich. Ronaldo scored 2. Sergio Ramos scored 2 headers as well. Yeah. Not quite Brennan Johnson and James Maddison, but fair play Tottenham. Look, City's form is relegation worthy. They're not going to get relegated on playing merit. If they do get relegated, it will be due to their court case, which is, it's up in the air. Might even be playing a factor into why City's form has dropped. Pep has signed the contract and said that even if City are relegated, he will stay. What do you think about the whole squad? Do you think many of them will stay?
I don't think so, because of the aging factor. I think that, like I mentioned, when you got players who are 33, 34, 32, which a lot of them are, if you're wasting at least 1 year in the Championship, and then I don't think they'd come back and win the Premier League the next season. So that's essentially 2 years out of maybe the 3 years that they have left playing that they're going to waste. I also don't buy that Pep would stay. I'm sorry. He's
calling him a liar.
Yeah, I mean, he's done it before. So Arteta, these managers all like to play mind games. He's the best manager in the world. I don't think he'd stick around in the Championship. I think he'd take a year off and then go into international management.
I think if it was just to go down one league to the Championship, I think maybe the older players, like if it's their last year on their contract, might leave. But most players, I think you'd be surprised, would stay, because it'd be 1 year out of their career. They'd jump back up and be right amongst the title race again. If they did leave, they'd drop down to a lower team most likely, and then when City are back in the Prem, they'll be thinking, why have I left? So I think you'd be surprised. People would obviously leave, but a lot more would stay.
Right. The Hollywood story: if City got relegated, Wrexham go up, we could see Phil Foden, Erling Haaland against Wrexham next season. It's unbelievable. Look, for every City flaw at the weekend, you have to give an enormous amount of credit to Ange Postecoglou. We heard from him at full time.
I think we're a better team this year than we were last year, but we've had some real flat spots, to say the least, that have kind of not allow us to progress, in terms of, where we are, in terms of our standing. But as I said, I think yesterday, I've never sensed like the players have lost belief in what we're doing. And it's very easy to, because obviously there's a lot of noise when things don't go well, but they've just, today was about sort of doubling down on our football principles, and we did that, and it is significant because obviously they've got an unbelievable record here at home.
They are the most confusing football club on the planet. Tottenham Hotspur, they make no sense. Does the Ange system simply work just 50% of the time?
Yeah, I mean, they're just always attack first, aren't they? So if you're against a team that's also attack first and potentially leaves more space at the back, you're going to get chances. Maybe against, half the teams that sit back a bit deeper, it's not going to work as well. So I think that's bang on. 50% of the time, they seem to win.
Yeah, I mean, off the facts, they are a 50% of the time team. I do think that Ange will tweak some things, because in his presser before City, he said he had been reflecting and thinking that maybe he could tweak some small things. He said his core principles he will stick to, but he had to try and work out the reasons why they lost to Ipswich, why they threw the game away against Brighton and lost that game. So I think going forward, we might see some changes, because for him, it must be more frustrating than anyone else, knowing that your side can beat the best team in the world 4-0 and then lose to Ipswich. So something has to change.
It is really bizarre. And you've also got to give Spurs credit. Instead of going forward, where they scored their 4 goals, they kept out Erling Haaland, they kept out Phil Foden, and they did it without their 2 best centre-backs. No Romero, no Van der Ven. They did it with Ben Davies as makeshift centre-back, who I think has been really harshly criticised over his time in a Tottenham shirt. It's bizarre. If Tottenham can sharpen up at the back, they will be a force to be reckoned with. But the player of the weekend, it was his birthday, and he scored a brace. James Maddison. Should Spurs be built all around him?
Well, I'm not sure about built all around him, just because, again, for how good his talent is, he's not as consistent in his actual output and productivity. But I've always loved James Maddison. I think there's still so much more to come from him. I remember both of his managers saying, Ange, and I think, who was it at Leicester, his manager?
Brendan Rodgers.
Brendan Rodgers. They both said how shocked they were at how good he was in training. So the talent's there. It's just, how can he get them good performances week in, week out over the course of a season?
Yeah, I sort of agree. I mean, talent-wise, you would build around him, but consistency, you can't. I think Ange will be building more around players like probably Van der Ven, Romero, perhaps Sarr in the midfield. They've got some really consistent players, and then they've got those sort of players like Brennan Johnson, Maddison, Werner even, who can like spurt in with a few goals and assists. So they've got a good mix, and if they can gain some consistency, which I think that they will start to do, I think they'll be challenging for top 4 till the end of the season.
Tottenham fans have been really adamant that they've wanted to see more of Mikey Moore. Ange brought on Timo Werner for the last bits of that game, and he had Kyle Walker on toast. He really did. Do you think that was the kind of moment that can sort of reshift a player's confidence, and can he kick on from there?
I don't think so. I mean, as a Chelsea fan, I've seen enough of Timo Werner to know that he's quite a fragile player. So the confidence moments are great, but you need someone who can go and go again. Someone like Darwin Núñez, I don't rate him that highly, but something that you have to credit him for is that even when he fails and messes up, he keeps on going and he doesn't let his head drop. Timo Werner's sort of the opposite, where when he messes up, he starts messing up more and more. And then if he has a good moment, it might continue for the next 10, 15 minutes, but you can't really rely on him past that.
Was this a psychological win? I just said before that Guardiola has lost to Spurs 9 times in his career. Not all of those were, of course, to Ange. They have a great record against City, and City playing poor. Was this just the perfect time to play them?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when you factor in their amazing record plus City's poor form, it was the best time. But I think the fact that Pep had just announced his contract and it was at the Etihad, I don't think anyone would have expected a 4-0 drubbing. So, yeah, back to the drawing board for City.
Yeah, I mean, the players probably didn't expect 4-0, but the Tottenham players, like you said, they knew Man City are in a bad patch, and that will be in their mind. The Tottenham players going into training that week, going into the match on the weekend, that, right, these are there to be got. We can definitely beat these. They're not that unstoppable force that we've seen in recent years.
Well, Tottenham's previous match before beating the 4-in-a-row champions in their own backyard was a home loss against Ipswich, who became the first team to face off against Ruben Amorim's Manchester United side. The former Sporting Lisbon manager was held to a 1-1 draw at Portman Road, and we heard from him at full time.
Today is that they are trying. They are really trying. They stay in the positions, they receive the information, and they try to use it in the game. That is very important. Even in the difficult moments, I felt that they were doing the things that we said for them to do. I know it's frustrating for the fans, but we are changing so much in this moment with a lot of games. We are going to suffer for a long period, and we will try to win games. This will take time.
This will take time. We're going to suffer for a while. I mean, it's not exactly what you want to hear if you're a Manchester United fan. How long do you think he can afford to readjust this Man United team for?
I mean, how long the fans will give him is another question, but I think it will take him a long time because, he said already in his pre-match interviews and his post-match interviews that this will take time, and going off the evidence of that first game against Ipswich, it will, because not just for his system, which the players should be able to adapt to, even if that takes a couple months. But he referenced in his post-match interview that the players were sort of fighting the instruction that they'd been given from, Ten Hag versus what he told them in just 2 training sessions. And then when you look at the makeup of the squad for his system, there's a lot of players who aren't ready for what he wants. You look at the 2 midfielders who started on Sunday, Casemiro and Eriksen. Neither of them are going to be in his plans. I doubt either of them will be at the club next season. Mazraoui had to fill in at centre half because the fullbacks that he would want aren't there. Some aren't fit. Luke Shaw only came on at the end of the game. So it'll take a lot of adjustment, I think. I don't think we'll get to see what he really wants for a good few months.
Obviously, he would have liked to have got off to a winning start. How do you think United played overall?
I think it was positive, but like you said, it's 2 training sessions into the new manager's reign. I don't think you can really go off anything. I think you're going to have that bedding in period where they're going to play well in the first few weeks regardless, because every player is going to be really up for it, trying to earn their place in the team. It re-switches you back on to giving everything you absolutely can for them first few weeks. And then, of course, you've got to try and get rid of your old habits from the old manager and rewire your new habits, which will take a few months.
Rashford on the score sheet after just a couple of seconds. Will he thrive under this system? Is he better as a out-and-out striker instead of Højlund and Xerxes?
I don't know. I think him and Højlund, that'll be good competition. I think they're both slightly above Xerxes at the moment from what I've seen. But I think with Rashford, we know he can be so good, and he should be so good, consistently. But there's something that's not right for me with his body language, for his application off the ball. It seems like he doesn't want to be there a lot of the time, it's just not a visually good look as a United player.
Yeah, I agree with you on that point. And I think that he's probably one of the players who might not struggle, but he might struggle to find a place in this team because he's not an out-and-out striker, and I don't think he likes playing there. And he's also not sort of a number 10 that Amorim would like to play with. So that'll be a real struggle for Amorim and Rashford trying to work out the best place to play him, because he's too good a player to just be on the bench every game. And I think sort of what you were saying, Lewis, that Højlund's very much still developing, and I don't think that Xerxes has the right skill set for the Premier League. So that'll take some adjustment for sure.
I'm not going to ask you, can Amorim guide United to a European place? Because we know he's a good manager. We've seen what he's done in Portugal. I'm going to put you on the spot. Will he guide United to a European place?
I think he will. I think they're slowly turning the corner in terms of dealing with the extreme criticism and scrutiny from the media, and they're learning how to cope with that better. So I think he will this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Champions League will be too tough for them, just because you look at Chelsea, the way that they're playing, and you look at even Spurs. I think that they won't be able to match those levels for the rest of this season. But Europa League, they should get. I think they're probably 3 points off the teams in Europa League places. So I think they can do that.
Well, United's rivals Liverpool are the table toppers for the time being, and it doesn't look like that will change anytime soon. Another week, another win, another step closer to title number 20.
That were wins by a big margin, but the rest of them were all by small margins. So we know how difficult it is to win a game, and these players have been longer in the Premier League than I've been. But I think it was last season, even later on in the season, that Arsenal led by 8 points and City came back. So if you face Arsenal, City, Chelsea and all these other teams, that Tottenham was great yesterday as well. They're all able to win so many games in a row. So it's nice to have this position, but we are definitely not get carried away.
Sounds like a little bit of mental mind games there. Liverpool can be 12 points clear next weekend. Title race over?
It's not over just because of how early it is in the season. 12 games in, nothing can be over. But like I mentioned, I think for City, it will be over if they lose. For Arsenal, definitely not. And, you've still got sort of the return leg, if you like, of Arsenal-Liverpool. And there's so many games over Christmas and the next few months before March, which is the next sort of international break. there's a long way to go yet, but you couldn't really have scripted it better if you're a Liverpool fan.
You comment on that return leg, as you call it, for Liverpool Arsenal. You know when that is? May
Right,
2025.
okay.
It's the third last game of the season.
It could be
as
too
Arsenal
late.
travel to Anfield. It could be huge. Do you think it's over, or are you still giving Arsenal and Man City a little tiny chance?
Yeah, as I said earlier, I think City can definitely kick into another gear once they've got the motivation, which I think they'll have now. Arsenal, with Odegaard back, we've seen they're a completely different team and got a good win on the weekend. So I don't think it's over, but I mean, City are in control. They're looking good. As much as I'd hate to admit it, they are looking good in games. They're capitalising on other teams' mistakes very well, and they're adapting very well in the game. So yeah, I think it's not over, but it's near it.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of mistakes, Mo Salah obviously capitalised on ridiculous Southampton performance. That I've seen him do it a couple of times this season. It's like they don't want to be here. They were like, oh, we shouldn't actually have got promoted last season. We're just going to go back down. Just ignore us for now. Where does Mo Salah rank in the Premier League's best ever players? Top 10, top 5, top 1?
I mean, I think top 1's a bit far. I think you guys, as Arsenal fans, would disagree with that. I think top 10 for sure. I'd say that's beyond question even. I think he's the best Premier League winger of all time. I mean, game after game, season after season, and something that probably doesn't get mentioned that much is just his availability. He's never ever injured, which is a trait that, you know, is almost Messi and Ronaldo like, his constant availability. So for me, yeah, easily top 10 of all time.
Yeah, top 10, like you said, there's no question there. I think top 5 is he's in the top 5 for me, definitely. Probably the best winger if we're not counting Omri as a winger. So yeah, I mean, it's just every single year it's relentless. The standard doesn't drop. He's getting older, but he still looks as fit as ever.
To be named as the Premier League's best ever player, how many times do you think you should have won the Premier League? Henry only won it twice.
I think if we're talking about individual players, it shouldn't matter. If we're talking about managers or teams, of course, it matters how many times you've won it. But a player can only do what they can in the team. It's a bit like Steven Gerrard, you know. The thing that haunted him his whole career was never winning the Premier League. But it wasn't really his fault, was it? And it's the same with Salah. And with how close Liverpool have gotten, you know, season after season under Klopp, this season they could win it, they could finish second, but I don't think that taints his legacy.
Yeah, I mean, he's been single-handedly for a lot of their wins, the reason why they've won. He's dragged them through so many games. So yeah, you can't question it.
Liverpool have a pretty horrible run coming up, both in the Premier League and Champions League. They've got Real Madrid midweek, and then off they travel. They've got Man City at home next week, Newcastle away, then Everton away. Will they survive this upcoming upcoming run of fixtures?
Yeah, I think so. I think that Slot has to play it sensibly, which I think he will. If I was the manager, for me, that Real Madrid game is almost irrelevant. They've won 4 from 4 in the Champions League, basically guaranteed qualification to the next round. And with such a huge game against City at the weekend, I think he should be resting players like Salah, Van Dijk, Trent, you know, going with a B team of sorts. Doesn't matter if they lose. And then we'll see how the City game goes. And then Newcastle and Everton, I mean, the form that they're in, you'd expect them to at least get 4 points from those 2 games. So, I mean, I think they will survive.
Chelsea continued their impressive form with a routine away win at Leicester. Nicholas Jackson once again on the score sheet and notched an assist too, leaving Enzo Maresca in a very, very favourable position.
He's doing very well. We said many times since we start, I think he's working hard on the ball and off the ball. He's making an effort to understand the way we want to play. Sometimes we use him almost as a midfielder, dropping. Sometimes we use him attacking behind, like if you remember Brighton or even today. So it depends a little bit the game plan. But we are very happy with Nico in the way he's playing on the ball, but especially the way he's playing off the ball, the way he's pressing. And in this moment, we are very happy and we are sure that he's going to improve and doing better game after game.
Japtej, you're the HaytersTV Chelsea resident expert. Do you think Chelsea will sustain this level?
I think so. I think that because it's not an exceptional level. Against Leicester, you know, we weren't great, got the job done. That's sometimes this season we played really well, like against Liverpool, and we actually lost. So I think our level has been consistently decent without being excellent. We sort of beat the teams that you'd expect us to beat and lost to the teams that you'd expect us to lose to. it's a bit like, Aston Villa last season when they got in the top four. So I think we will just finish fourth. We're not better than Arsenal, or I know that we're level on points with you guys, and as like a joke, I'd love to say, oh, we could finish above you. It's not going to happen. But I think we are. I think we are the fourth best team in the league, so I think we'll finish fourth.
The result also saw Steve Cooper get the sack as Leicester lied just a point above the drop zone. Under a third of the season played. Fair decision?
I thought it was a little harsh. I mean, to my knowledge, they're still out of the relegation zone. And I think the first few games, they were overachieving, in my opinion, in terms of their league position. So I understand the decision, but I do think it is a little harsh and a little early.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree on that, just because I think a good barometer of how correct a decision is or not is how the fans feel. And I've seen on social media that a lot of Leicester fans are happy with this decision. They sort of wanted him out for the last 3 or 4 weeks. And I feel like, probably us three here and many people watching wouldn't have watched Leicester so many times this season, but the fans watch week in, week out. And if they're not happy, only 11 games in, do you not feel like they sort of know best?
Yeah, I do think a fan's opinion does have some sort of pull, but I don't think it should, I don't think the fans should decide whether the manager stays or goes. Unless it's, 11, let's say we're 11 game weeks in, unless it's 11 weeks of all the fans screaming, he has to go, that might sway you. But, the fans are very reactionary. They don't understand the ins and outs of how the club works or what the manager's actually doing, what he's been asked to do with the players.
The fans fund and run the club in every single scenario. The fans are the heartbeat of any team. If the fans aren't happy, if the fans are getting on the players' backs, it changes everything.
So
are you telling me that players can't feel it?
Of course, they feel the atmosphere in the grounds, especially if it's going on consistently week after week. But judging by that, then you should forget to have, a club owner and just put a poll out on Twitter, who should we sign? And that's how you'd run a football club.
So a crazy stat about Steve Cooper, by the way. He's managed 67 Premier League games. He's only won at 4 grounds.
Is that a real stat?
I literally have got Steve Cooper's Premier League record. He has managed 67 games with 14 wins. So the 4 grounds does make about sense.
Yeah.
Wow.
Shocking record.
That is crazy.
But he speaks very well. I'm sad for him. Let's see if there's been any questions from the viewers. Jap's Edge.
Yeah, we've got a question. I don't know if it's a question or a joke. It's saying, can United win the league?
Whatever again, or this season?
I mean, ever again? Yes, probably at some point. Anytime soon? No.
I think it leads on to a wider question, which has also come in from Dan here, which is, how long do you think it'll take Amorim to bed in his system and adjust? I actually think that it's a good question, because one of the things that I've picked up on from Amorim so far, from his interview since he joined the club, is that he's a bit taken aback by the size of the club. He's mentioned, how many departments there are at United versus how few there were at Sporting. And he joked in his interview with Sky yesterday that he'd done more media commitments in his week here than he'd done in 4 years in Portugal. So I think that it will take him a long time to get used to just the size of the club. And he's not just going to be a coach at United, whereas at Sporting, he could, just be on the field coaching his players. At United, there's a lot that goes on around it. So that plus, the makeup of the squad, injuries, etc. And I think it will take a long time for him to settle in.
Yeah, and just on that, that's what a lot of, fans take for granted, especially when we see, players and managers come to United with such good records at previous clubs and on good form. They go to United and they just taken back and shocked by how big the club is and so much else that comes of it, the spotlight you're under. So, I mean, before Ten Hag come, the first week, everyone was raving about Ten Hag, similar to how we are now with Amorim. So, yeah, he's got a lot to deal with on his plate.
Let's get one more question in.
Yeah, we've got another question from Simon, who says, how many points clear will Liverpool have to get before the title race is over?
Before it's over?
It depends on what month is. I mean, right now they'd need more than what they're on for it to be over. By Christmas, if they're 12 points clear, then you can start calling for it to be over. I think you can start having a real conversation.
How I've seen Arsenal over the last few years, when I've seen them go 8 points clear, yes, I think City had a game in hand, so it was technically 5. But the way that the tides sway, I reckon that until you're mathematically clear, it's not over. I think realistically, if Liverpool are 12, 15 points clear in late February, early March, then you're probably thinking to yourself, okay, look, they're not going to catch up. They're not going to catch Liverpool up now. But until then, I don't think we can really say that the race is officially over. Injuries happen.
That's it.
Dips of form. It all depends on that. If Mo Salah gets injured tomorrow,
Yeah, that's it. That's them done.
who knows what happens? Who knows?
Yeah, actually, it's a fair point on Salah because I think a lot was made when Arsenal had, Odegaard, White, Saka injured, but I don't think any of those players are as vital to their team as Salah is to Liverpool. I mean, the rest of that front line is so inconsistent. Gakpo, Nunez, Diaz. You can't rely really on any of them. They can be good to assist Salah and get a couple goals with him. But if one of them was leading the line, they really are in trouble. So yeah, it's still up for grabs.
Let's get on to Arsenal. Mikel Arteta's side look back to their brilliant best with a freshly fit Bukayo.
The assist and the goals. During the international break, Harry Kane was a bit disappointed at people not coming to England. People look at that today and say, look at the quality of his performance and the length of his performance, and think, well, was he really injured? How injured was he? What would you say to them?
Well, we can send MRI scan. Very simple, but that's a communication that was very clear between the medical staff of Arsenal and the national team. He hasn't done anything. He was away, and he needed time to heal. He's done one training session.
I think Bukayo probably did need time to heal. He looked shattered over the last few weeks before the international break, and he just looked unbelievable. It was a fantastic goal. I have a question. Is Bukayo Saka underrated?
I don't think so, because I think he's so highly rated now. I've not spoken to anyone in a long time who would try and, sort of tarnish how good he is or underrate him. I think he's fairly rated. I'd say he's the second best right winger in the world after Mo Salah. So I don't know how you can be underrated when people think you're that good.
It just seems to get a lot of comparisons on social media. People saying, "Oh, Bukayo Saka would never." Anytime anybody does anything, it's always Saka is the comparison point. You say Salah is the best winger in the world at the moment. Only Mo Salah has more goal involvements than Bukayo Saka this season. Salah has 14, which is annoyingly good.
It is, yeah. But I mean, with Saka, the fact he's getting compared to so much shows that he's highly rated by everyone now. I think you go back a year to 18 months, non-Arsenal fans would have said he's maybe a bit overrated. But Arsenal fans, of course, have loved him for years, and I think everyone's starting to agree with him now. From
minute one, Arsenal looked absolutely fantastic on Saturday. Big difference is Martin Odegaard's back. Is it literally that simple? Is he the change?
I mean, it's night and day, Arsenal, with or without Odegaard. And the way he gets Arsenal playing from back to front, and his link up with Bukayo Saka just can't be replicated by anyone else in the team. There's only probably one player who has the similar style to Odegaard, which is Wanyeri. It's slightly different, but he's the only one who can come in and play that same role. And he's not going to have the same chemistry he's got with Bukayo Saka. So, yeah, it is as simple as that, I think.
Well, speaking of Wanyeri, will he get more minutes now? He's got his first Premier League goal?
I think maybe gradually, but I think it will be very gradual, because Arteta said in his post-match presser that he got asked that, basically, should he be starting more? Should he be playing more? And he said, look, he's so young, it's got to be like a brick by brick process. When you're building a house, you put a brick down, lay the cement, and you keep going. So I think from those comments, Arteta still sees it as a very long process, which I think is probably correct. I think that for someone of that age, you can get thrown in the deep end like a Pedri or a Gavi, and then you start getting loads of injuries, maybe, gets you ahead a bit, and, you can't really slow down the process. Whereas if Arteta spends the rest of the season, giving him 20, 30 minutes, playing him, in a few Champions League games when there's too many fixtures at one time, then I think he'll be ready for next season when he can really start to take off.
Yeah, I do think it's that. And I also think he's just not going to get in ahead of Odegaard in that position. He's just the second best in that position at the moment. But he's built him up, like you said, brick by brick now, to where if Odegaard was to get injured or couldn't play for a match, he's happy to start him in there instead of maybe bringing a winger like Trossard into that position where he's not as comfortable.
Wanyeri has literally had the opportunity for the last few weeks to fill in that Odegaard gap, and Arteta didn't play him there. You've got to think, yes, of course, Pedri and Gavi's careers have maybe hypothetically stagnated a little bit. You've got Lamine Yamal playing at the peak of his powers right now. Jude Bellingham was thrown onto the scene at 16. So was Gareth Bale. Harry, if you're fit enough, if you're old enough, you're ready.
Yeah, I think I'd like to see him get more minutes. I would, but only if Odegaard's injured. With Odegaard in the team, I just don't see where he fits in.
You can't play two in that.
Like, well, we got Rice on the other side as well. He's not going to get ahead of them. But I'd definitely be happy for him to start for Arsenal. I'd be comfortable.
Yeah, I also think that it probably was a mistake from Arteta not to play more when Odegaard was injured, because, like we've seen, he's getting scraps for minutes at the minute, and every time he comes on, he's making a difference. Against Forest, when he came on, the first thing he did was take an unreal touch, dribble past two players, and put a shot just outside the post. When you got a player who can do that sort of impact on a game, you've got to play them more. And I think that Arteta will have seen now that he can rely on him, which is a good thing for Arsenal fans as well.
Can I just quickly touch on Aston Villa? They are starting to fade away. 1 win in their last 7 matches. Should people panic?
I mean, 1 win in 7, you've got to panic at some point. There's definitely some alarm bells have to be ringing. We look at City; they've only done it with 4 games or 5 games, and everyone's screaming at them. So, judging by how good they were last year, they've definitely got to be worrying slightly. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think panic has to be described as what it means, because fans should maybe be getting a little bit annoyed. Rivals can maybe say whatever, but there should be no talk of sacking Emery, because you're never going to get a better manager than Emery for a club like Villa. And I think it was to be expected. A lot of people were saying earlier in the season, I was as well, that when the Champions League games start to ramp up, then, Christmas comes and you got the Premier League winter schedule. And Villa don't have a massive squad like, a Chelsea or, a bigger team that could deal with it. So I think it should be measured panic.
There should be obviously no chat about Unai Emery getting sacked, but one manager who probably is facing fears of getting the sack, his side play tonight. Julian Lopetegui, West Ham versus Newcastle. Any predictions for that one?
Yeah, I think just going off West Ham's recent form, Newcastle have been hit and miss. I think it'll be a comfortable win for Newcastle, even away. I'm going to go 3-0 to Newcastle.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. 2-0 or so, because West Ham, they're just not at it really, are they? If Lopetegui got saved in many ways by Ten Hag's last game, winning that, if he hadn't won that, I think he'd be out the door by now.
It's not even 2:15 on Monday afternoon, and here's my prediction, and you can count on it. Newcastle are winning 4-0 tonight, and Lopetegui is getting sacked. You heard it here first. Japtej, before we round up, any more questions?
Someone said, is Lamine Yamal better than Saka?
No.
I guess you two can take that.
End of. It doesn't really need much for comment, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, off form, they're probably pretty even at the moment. But I mean, Saka's done it for 4 or 5 years now at the top level, so there's no comparison.
Yeah, I think actually on that question, I think it's because last season people were saying a lot about Palmer and Saka, and as a Chelsea fan myself, I had to say I'd go Saka, because you've got to value longevity. And Palmer's hit the ground running, and he couldn't have done more in the time he's had. But you've got to value, like you said, that 4 years that Saka's got behind him. He's built up that credibility. So, yeah, I think for Yamal and Palmer, they've still got a long way to go to reach Saka's level.
Well, that's all for this week. There's plenty of Champions League action to cover on Haters channel. So make sure you're subscribing, following, and looking at all of our content. We will see you next week as Liverpool take on Manchester City. It's going to be a fantastic game at Anfield. We'll find out if there's a